Hi, I'm Bonnie Holub. In my continuing series to share cool things I find on my journey with you, I want to share a report that I found recently that was done by the Chartist Group and Kythera Labs. So let me switch my view so that you can look at the report with me. Here's the report I was talking about. It was published almost a year ago in April of 2021. It's about telehealth adoption through the pandemic. So it certainly shows 2020, the first year of the pandemic, and it shows data from across the United States and various kinds of visits. But what I'm doing is scrolling down here to a chart that I found really interesting. Here's the chart I like. Primary and specialty care and the divergence in sustained telehealth adoption between visit types. So this top line across the top, the blue line that goes up to 71.3% and stays steady across the entire year is behavioral health. The turquoise line is primary care, that is just going to your doctor for a checkup or maybe you have a cold, something like that. Medical specialties are in green and they spike up as well but go down a little bit lower towards the end of the year. And then surgical specialties are the last bottom line, which is in orange. So the question is, what's different about behavioral health, this line that stays pretty steady at about 70% adoption for telehealth visits throughout the year? Well, that's behavioral health. Now, if you haven't heard this term, that refers to things like counseling. So if you're in for mental health issues and you have counseling related to them, that would be behavioral health. It would also be related to people who are dealing with addiction treatment or maybe eating disorders, those kinds of things. So whenever I look at a report like this, I ask myself a few things. First of all, there's a data visualization. Is it done right and is it done well? In my opinion, this is done well. Part of the things that I look for in this is that the lower axis, the horizontal axis that you see, is at 0, so it really is a baseline. Sometimes charts chop it off at like 80% or 20%, and that has the ill effect of magnifying the result of changes. So when we look at this, it goes from 0 to 70% along the left-hand vertical axis, and so that's good for me. Secondly, the way it is shown, I think, is a lean and clear interpretation. It's easy for us to see what the percentages are, and more importantly, the multiples. So you can see that the line at 71% is about 3 times as high as the one at 23%, and many more times as high as the one at 5.2%. And then another thing that I do when I look at any kind of visualization is I say, does this make sense to me? Does it make sense in the real world and from my experience? And I would say absolutely, because I have family members who have had behavioral health visits during the pandemic, and they have commented to me about when they are online or when they're in person. And it makes sense that you can't do surgery remotely or online, and that we have figured out ways to do things like primary care. I know I've had primary care visits too during the pandemic that have been telehealth visits. So I thought this was an interesting report that I saw. I look forward to seeing more from these two groups. Okay, so what are the takeaways from this? Well, I think one is that we often think about industries in verticals, and we talk about somebody who works in healthcare versus somebody who works in retail. But what I think this gives us insights into is that the pandemic has changed how various industries do their work, but often there are vast differences between different parts of different industries. So the part of the healthcare industry that provides behavioral health counseling is very different in the way that the pandemic has changed its business from the part of the industry that does surgery. So I think it is important for us to keep in mind that we look at more detail and really see what the data are telling us. Number two, I'm sure a lot of my healthcare colleagues will be interested to see, well, what have the results been? Just, we all started doing counseling over telehealth, but has it been as effective? Has it been less effective, more effective? What are the outcomes for patients? Because that's what really matters. And I'm sure that there are other questions that you probably have from this as well. I look forward to hearing them. Tell me what you think. Thank you.